worth more than 1,000 worlds. One envoy slain had unleashed 1,000 warships. And should it ever happen again, humanity would not hesitate to answer with fire enough to silence the galaxy itself. Epilogue: The Weight of Vengeance. On Earth, no celebrations were held. No parades, no speeches, no songs of triumph. The war was not a victory, it was a message. Elias Kale, the slain ambassador, was laid to rest beneath the skis of his homeworld. His people stood in mourning, silent, remembering. And in that silence, the galaxy understood. Humanity does not kill for conquest. Humanity does not wage war for pride. But if one life is taken, if one spark of their peace is extinguished, then Earth will rise, not as diplomats, not as farmers, not as builders, but as wrath itself. And that wrath will not end until the stars themselves bear witness. It began with a single execution. The Vadral Empire, a race of spined, insected conquerors, dragged a captured human diplomat into the center of their grand conclave. Before millions of their kind, they slit his throat with a ceremonial blade, letting his blood spill on the marble floor. The act was broadcast across the galaxy, a deliberate insult, a statement to every race watching. Humanity's envoys were nothing, their treaties were dust, their promises a hollow echo. The Vadral overlord hissed as the body was displayed, raising its clawed arms high. See how fragile they are. One life, one single frail emissary. This is the measure of Earth's weakness. They will do nothing. They can do nothing. The crowd thundered with approval, their screeches echoing against vaulted ceilings. The galaxy trembled with their arrogance. For in that instant, the Vadral believed they had placed humanity beneath their heel, forever cowed and humiliated. But arrogance is the sharpest blade one can turn against themselves. The banquet of mockery. The celebration spread quickly. On the Vadral homeworld, the streets were filled with processions. Their warships circled their moons in luminous displays, trailing fire and banners as their leaders broadcast mocking messages. They send envoys, we send corpses, one admiral jeered. They bring words, we answer with silence and blood, another laughed. Even their allies joined the chorus of mockery. Other species, timid, submissive, watched the execution and whispered that perhaps humanity truly was weaker than they believed. After all, humans had long projected an image of restraint. They were diplomats, explorers, builders of great alliances. They were measured, slow to anger, always the last to rattle sabers in a galaxy of endless conflict. And so, many nodded in agreement when the Vadral declared Earth too civilized to retaliate, too merciful, too unwilling to stain their hands with the same cruelty the galaxy wielded so easily. The galaxy mistook patience for weakness. They mistook silence for fear. But humanity had written the lesson of vengeance in fire and steel long before the stars knew their names. The shifting of the heavens. At first there was nothing, no condemnation, no declaration of war, no armies mobilized on visible channels. The Vadral boasted that Earth's silence was proof of their submission. Then came the whispers. Merchant convoys reported unusual traffic in Sol. Thousands of ships recalled from deep space expeditions. Civilian channels darkened as entire sectors cut comms, going silent behind veils of encrypted signals. Distant observatories saw flickers, shadows moving against the stars, colossal vessels emerging from hidden docks. At first, no one believed. A galaxy steeped in arrogance thought humans incapable of such things. Then the first broadcast came. A cold, metallic voice, transmitted in every major tongue, resonated across the stars. One human life has been taken. The price will be paid in kind. Withdraw from our path, or you will be buried with them." The Vaedral laughed at the message. To them, it was nothing more than empty threats from a wounded prey species. They dismissed it with scorn. But the other civilizations, the ones who knew of humanity's wars, their ancient histories, their endless capacity for wrath, did not laugh. They grew silent, afraid, because they recognized the tone, the finality in those words. The unveiling of retribution. The silence broke like thunder. On the third galactic cycle after the execution, the Vaedral fleet stationed at the edge of their empire detected anomalies. Sensors screamed as thousands of ships blinked into existence. Human warships, colossal dreadnoughts, sleek carriers, and vast cruisers arrived not in scattered forces, but in formation so perfect it seemed choreographed. The fleets were endless, waves of steel that stretched beyond the limits of scanners, hulls black and silver marked with the insignias of Earth and her colonies. Engines burned like blue suns. They did not speak, did not bargain, did not negotiate. For humanity's patience had ended. The galaxy watched in horror as one life taken birthed a storm of vengeance. The sky on fire. The first battle was not a battle, it was a culling. The Vaedral border fleet, arrogant and unprepared, moved to intercept. They had believed human fleets primitive compared to their own, smaller, less efficient, lacking the centuries of conquest that had honed the Vaedral armada. Their belief shattered in the first salvo. Human dreadnoughts opened fire with weapons the galaxy had never witnessed. Rail cannons that tore ships apart at near-light speeds, lances of plasma that sliced through armor like paper, swarms of autonomous drones that blackened the void, overwhelming defenses with mechanical precision. Entire Vaedral squadrons disintegrated in seconds. Ships that had stood for centuries as symbols of their dominance were reduced to burning wrecks scattered across the stars. The survivors tried to retreat, their panicked transmissions echoing in static-laced cries. But there was no escape. Humanity's fleets advanced relentlessly, wave after wave, their formation unbroken, their discipline unshaken. The void was filled with fire, and in that fire, the Vaedral learned what it meant to awaken a species that did not forgive. The March of the Thousand. As the first systems fell, the true scale of Earth's fury became undeniable. It was not one fleet, not 10, not 100, but 1,000 warships, each bristling with weapons that eclipsed galactic standards. Behind them trailed transports, troop carriers, and planetary siege engines that dwarfed entire cities. Humanity had mobilized its entire war machine, not just Earth, but every colony, every ally that bore the banner of mankind. The galaxy had thought humans fractured, their fleets scattered, their strength diluted by distance. They were wrong. For in their long patience, humanity had built silently, forged in the shadows, preparing for the day when their restraint would no longer hold. And now that day had come. Humanity's march was unstoppable. One system after another, the Vaedral defenses crumbled. Their mighty fortress worlds burned. Their orbital cities shattered. Their proudest admirals watched in disbelief as human fleets tore through everything they threw forward. For every human life taken, 1,000 enemies perished. The voice of vengeance. Then came the second broadcast. It was not a speech, not a declaration, but a warning, calm, measured, chilling. This is the price of arrogance. One envoy was murdered in pride. One voice silenced in cruelty. You thought it would end there. It does not. This ends when your empire no longer draws breath. The galaxy trembled at those words, for it was not rage that spoke, it was justice, cold and absolute. Even the Vedral began to realize the truth. Their leaders, once defiant, sent desperate pleas for negotiations, but humanity did not answer. Their fleets pressed on, engines glowing, weapons firing with merciless rhythm. It was no longer retaliation, it was eradication. Fire across worlds. The climax came with the siege of Vedral Prime. 1,000 human warships orbited the planet, blotting out the sun. Their shadows stretched across continents, casting darkness on the hives and citadels below. The Vedral gathered their last armies, filled the skies with fighters, lined their surface with artillery. It did not matter. The bombardment began with a silence so heavy the world seemed to hold its breath. Then came the first strikes, beams of plasma carving oceans into steam, rail slugs tearing mountains to ash. Orbital platforms crumbled like sand. Armies evaporated under the fire of weapons, so precise they seemed like the wrath of gods. For 3 days the sky burned. For 3 nights the ground shook. Cities fell, hives collapsed, oceans boiled. By the 4th day, Vedral Prime was silent, its proud towers reduced to ruins, its people scattered in terror. And still the fleets lingered, as if daring anyone to speak against them. The silence after fire. When it ended, the galaxy itself seemed to hold its breath. The Vedral Empire was broken, their fleets annihilated, their worlds burned, their leaders either dead or dragged away in chains. The species that had once mocked humanity now whispered in terror of them. And the lesson spread like wildfire. Earth does not forget. Earth does not forgive. One life taken is enough to awaken 1,000 warships. The survivors, those rare few spared by humanity's measured mercy, spoke quietly, trembling in the ruins. Never provoke Earth again. Because in the end, the galaxy learned what patience truly meant. Humanity's patience is vast, but their vengeance is infinite.